Imagine the most powerful palace on earth. Not just a building, a city within a city. Golden doors, silk-draped halls, fountains that never stopped flowing. A place where the King of Kings sat on a throne so elevated that petitioners had to prostrate themselves on the marble floor before daring to speak. Now imagine that palace at night, the torches burning low, the guards standing motionless, and behind those golden doors, sounds that no palace should ever produce. Screams, not from prisoners in some distant dungeon, from the royal chambers themselves. This is the story of what happened inside the Achaemenid court after Xerxes returned from Greece. A story of obsession so consuming that it destroyed a king, of a queen whose revenge became legend, and of a family, a brother, his wife, his sons, his daughter, erased from history because they stood between a tyrant and what he wanted. The Greek historian Herodotus recorded this tale. He called it one of the most horrifying episodes he had ever uncovered, and for good reason. To understand what happened, you have to understand where Xerxes was when this story began. In 480 BCE, he had marched against Greece with the largest army ever assembled. Ancient sources claim over 2 million men. Modern historians estimate somewhere between 100,000 and 300,000, still staggering for its time. He had bridged the Hellespont, lashed the sea itself when it defied him, and watched his soldiers pass from Asia into Europe like a river of flesh and iron. Then came Salamis. From a golden throne on the shore, Xerxes watched his fleet destroyed. Greek triremes, smaller and faster, rammed his warships into splinters. The sea filled with Persian dead. And the King of Kings, the living embodiment of Ahura Mazda's will on earth, sat helpless as his empire's power sank beneath the waves. He returned to Persia a different man. The army marched home through Thrace, thousands dying of hunger and disease. By the time Xerxes reached Sardis, the mask had cracked. He was no longer the confident god-king who had left Persepolis 2 years earlier. He was humiliated, angry, and looking for something, anything, to make him feel powerful again. That need would destroy his family. In Sardis, where Xerxes wintered after the Greek disaster, he encountered a woman who would become the focus of his obsession. Her name is lost to history. We know only that she was the wife of his brother, Masistes, a man who had served loyally during the Greek campaign, who had spoken truth when others flattered, who had tried to warn Xerxes against disaster. This woman possessed something that, to a king fresh from humiliation, was intolerable: composure. In the presence of the great king, surrounded by the apparatus of absolute power, she did not tremble. She did not lower her eyes. She moved through the court with a stillness that looked almost like defiance. Xerxes wanted her. He sent gifts. He arranged private audiences disguised as family courtesies. He made it clear, in the language of the palace where a whisper could mean promotion or death, that he desired her. She refused him, not with soft deflections, not with strategic ambiguity. She refused him completely, and she did it more than once. Herodotus records that she would not bend to his will. For any king, this would be an insult. For Xerxes, fresh from watching his empire's pride drown at Salamis, it was a wound that would not heal. But Xerxes could not simply take her. Masistes was not a minor courtier. He was the king's brother, a respected commander, a man with deep ties to the Bactrian nobility. Openly seizing his wife could ignite a rebellion that the post-Salamis empire could not survive. So Xerxes did something more insidious. He turned his attention to the daughter. Her name was Artaynte. She was young, raised in a world where the king's favor was the most valuable currency that existed. When Xerxes began to notice her, when gifts arrived, when invitations came, it would have been nearly impossible for her to refuse, even if she had wanted to. Xerxes arranged a marriage between Artaynte and his own son, the crown prince Darius. On the surface, it was an honor. What father would not want his daughter married to the future king of kings? But the marriage was not the end, it was the beginning. After the wedding, Xerxes brought Artaynte into the royal household, and there, away from her father's protection, he made her his lover. Let that sink in. The king of kings took his own brother's daughter, his niece, as his mistress. He used his son's marriage as cover, then betrayed both his son and his brother in the most intimate way possible. Artaynte became his obsession. Herodotus writes that Xerxes obtained her and that they became lovers. The language is clinical, but the reality was not. In a palace where the king's word was law, where no meant nothing when spoken to a woman, there was only one direction this could go. Amestris saw everything. She was the queen, the daughter of Otanes, one of the 7 nobles who had helped Darius the Great seize the throne a generation earlier. She had given Xerxes his heir, Artaxerxes, and his older son, Darius. She had survived decades in the most dangerous political environment on earth, and she was not naive. In the Persian court, information moved through servants, eunuchs, and guards. Amestris had her own network. She noticed when Xerxes' attention shifted. She saw the gifts that appeared on Artaynte. She watched the girl's posture change. The confidence of someone who believed she held a secret advantage. But Amestris did not blame Artaynte. She blamed the mother. In her mind, the woman who had refused Xerxes had now placed her own daughter in his bed as a weapon. It was a calculated strike, Amestris believed, a way to humiliate the queen and advance her family's position at court. Whether this was true did not matter. Amestris believed it. And once she believed it, the woman who had refused Xerxes was marked for destruction. The explosion came from a piece of clothing. Amestris had woven a robe with her own hands, a royal garment imbued with her status and her labor. In a palace where servants produced everything, a robe made personally by the queen carried immense symbolic weight. It was intimate. It was sacred. It was proof that she was not merely decorative. She was the central woman of the empire. During one of his meetings with Artaynte, drunk on his own authority, Xerxes made a promise. He swore an oath to give her anything she desired. She asked for the robe. Xerxes went cold. He knew what this meant. He begged her to choose something else. He offered entire cities. He offered vaults of gold. She refused. The King of Kings had given his sacred word. Was he going to shatter it over a piece of cloth? He took the robe from Amestris. Historians do not know what excuse he gave. Perhaps he invented a ceremony. Perhaps he said nothing. It did not matter. The robe left the queen's possession and landed on Artaynte's shoulders. The next time the court assembled, Amestris saw it. Artaynte stood among the royal women, wearing the queen's own hand-woven robe, proudly, visibly, like a flag planted on conquered territory. Amestris said nothing. She did not scream. She did not lash out. She went still. She observed. And in that silence, a decision was carved in stone. Amestris waited for the right moment. In Persian tradition, the king's birthday carried a unique power. On that day, the king was expected to grant any request made by a high-ranking figure. To refuse would violate divine custom. When the birthday arrived, the palace filled with nobles. Musicians played. Wine flowed. Xerxes sat elevated, playing the generous god-king, distributing favors with practiced ease. Then Amestris rose. She praised Xerxes publicly, his wisdom, his strength, his divine right to rule. Every word sounded like devotion. Every sentence was perfectly calibrated. Then she made her request. She asked for the wife of Masistes, not Artaynte, the mother. The woman, Amestris believed, had engineered her humiliation. She asked for her to be handed over, placed under the queen's authority. Xerxes froze. He understood immediately what this meant. If he refused his queen on the birthday in front of the entire court, he would shatter the tradition that gave him his image of divine generosity. If he agreed, he would deliver his own brother's wife to a woman whose fury he had created. Herodotus writes that Amestris was insistent, and the law compelled him. At a Persian royal banquet, every request must be granted. Xerxes said yes. The woman was taken from her quarters and delivered to the queen. Amestris did not order a quick execution. That would have been mercy, and mercy was not the point. There were a dozen quiet ways to eliminate a rival in an ancient court. Amestris wanted none of them. What happened next is recorded by Herodotus in words that still chill the blood after 2,500 years. Amestris had the woman restrained. Then she ordered her mutilated. Her breasts were cut off and thrown to dogs. Her nose, her ears, her lips, all cut away. Her tongue was cut out. Every part of her body that carried identity, that allowed speech, that signaled femininity or status, was removed. And she was left alive. Think about what that meant in a Persian palace. A noble woman's face was her shield. Her voice was her influence. Her body was her presence in the world. Amestris did not just inflict suffering, she surgically erased the instruments of personhood. She turned a living woman into something the court could no longer engage with as human, a figure to be stared at, pitied, feared, but never spoken to as an equal again. The message was addressed to every woman in the palace, to every man who might consider using his family as a weapon against the queen, to every person who thought they could touch what belonged to Amestris and walk away whole. Masistes did not know what had happened to his wife. When Xerxes summoned him after the birthday, Masistes was still living in ignorance. The king made an offer. Divorce your wife, and I will give you one of my daughters instead. It was a grotesque proposal, the same man who had taken Masistes' daughter as his lover now offering a different daughter as compensation. Masistes refused. He told Xerxes that he was content with his wife, that she had borne him children, that he would not abandon her. He did not know that while he spoke, his wife was being unmade in the queen's chambers. Xerxes was furious. He told Masistes that he would have neither his wife nor a royal daughter. In this way you will learn to accept that which is offered you, the king said. Masistes left. He walked back toward his household, expecting to find the wife he had just defended. Instead, he found a woman he could not recognize. Her face gone, her voice silenced, her body turned into a monument to the queen's vengeance. Something broke in him. Masistes gathered his sons. He had deep connections in Bactria, where he had served as satrap. If he could reach that territory, he could raise an army, challenge his brother, or at least carve out a space beyond the throne's reach. He fled east. Xerxes learned of his flight almost immediately. He sent soldiers, not ordinary troops, but elite forces, to hunt his brother down. They caught Masistes and his sons on the road. All of them were killed. The king's brother, the king's nephews, erased because of an obsession and a stolen robe. Xerxes had survived Salamis. He had survived the long march home. He had survived the destruction of his brother's family. He did not survive his own palace. In 465 BCE, after reigning for 20 years, Xerxes was murdered in his bed by Artabanus, a powerful court official and commander of the royal guard. The conspiracy was born in the same atmosphere of fear and betrayal that Xerxes and Amestris had cultivated. Artabanus, according to Greek sources, had previously killed Xerxes' son Darius and feared discovery. Or perhaps he simply saw an opportunity. Whatever his motive, he used his access to the king's private chambers, access that should have been reserved for the most trusted servants, to end the reign. A eunuch named Mithridates, one of Xerxes' personal attendants, helped Artabanus gain entry to the bedroom. In the dark, surrounded by the luxury he had used to insulate himself from the world, the King of Kings was killed by men who had once knelt before him. No army, no battlefield, no glorious death in combat, just a quiet room and a blade in the night. But the story does not end there. After Xerxes' death, Artabanus attempted to seize power. He controlled the palace for 7 months and was even recognized as king by Egypt. He tried to manipulate the succession, telling Xerxes' son Artaxerxes that his brother Darius had murdered their father. Artaxerxes, grieving and deceived, had Darius executed. But Artabanus had not accounted for Amestris. She was still there, still watching, still waiting. She had lost her husband and 1 son, but she had another son left, Artaxerxes, and she understood how power worked in that palace better than any man. She reached Artaxerxes with the truth. She helped him see that Artabanus had engineered the chaos for his own benefit. The young king moved against the conspirator, killing him and his followers before they could strike again. Amestris survived. She lived to an old age, dying toward the end of Artaxerxes' reign, still feared, still powerful, the queen mother standing behind the throne. The Greek historians who recorded these events would later hold her up as the embodiment of Persian cruelty, the nightmare queen who carved women apart and fed on suffering. They did not invent the foundation of the story. Something like this happened. A woman was mutilated, a brother was hunted, a king was killed in his bed, and through it all, Amestris endured. The Persian Empire did not collapse because of Xerxes' obsession. It would last another 130 years until Alexander burned Persepolis to the ground. But the empire decayed from within. An institution that consumes its own family like meat cannot hold together forever. Xerxes and Amestris tried to dominate their world by reducing people to objects, ornaments, or warnings. In the end, the blade reversed. The palace they ruled became the place where they were betrayed, widowed, and buried. The final image to carry is this: the halls of Persepolis, quiet after the storm. The air still heavy with the memory of screams and whispered conspiracies. The throne now occupied by Artaxerxes, young but permanently scarred by the blood of his father and his brother. Standing near him, Amestris, the queen mother, alive when nearly everyone else is dead. The mutilated, the executed, the betrayed, none of them have a voice anymore. She does. In that court, survival was the only proof of power that mattered, and she held it. If this story reached into you, if you felt the weight of those golden halls and the darkness they contained, then hit that like button. It helps more history lovers find this channel. Subscribe to Reinvoke History for more deep investigations into the stories that textbooks sanitize. And turn on notifications, because the past is never as far away as it seems. Tell me in the comments, what shocked you most? The queen's vengeance? The king's obsession? Or the fact that Amestris survived them all? I read every single one. Until next time.